So the question that I keep thinking about is, can the Eagles only win one way? Because to be a really top offense, Ross, and I think you would agree, you've got to be able to win multiple ways because every week is a different week in the NFL.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, which means class is in session with the fantastic Greg Cosell from NFL Films University. Day one of our 2-day voyage, whatever, into week 7 in the NFL with the civilian GOAT, Greg Cosell. Check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. As you can tell, I am not in my home office studio today. I am on the road in a hotel room in Cincinnati because I'll be on the call tonight for Westwood One of the Steelers and the Bengals. A little bit of news to get to later on in the show, but it's primarily going to be about Greg Cosell. He is the man. He's presented by Liquid Death. Not only is the water fantastic, but it is by far the best iced tea you can have out there. Get yourself some Liquid Death. Some of you still don't even know what it is. You need to find out. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, a lot to discuss. Seems like every week a lot of new things are happening. Teams playing better, teams playing worse. Let's start with my game tonight and your thoughts on the Bengals and the Steelers. Just studying for this, a lot of interesting things there. What Flacco brought to the Bengals and how the Steelers are operating on offense for sure.
Yeah, the Steelers are they're a pretty condensed offense. They last week they played, I believe, 13 snaps with 6 O-line personnel. Darnell Washington as a blocker is a really significant part of what they do. They don't really push the ball down the field very much. They don't really throw the ball between the numbers very much. It's a pretty condensed offense. There have been games where Rodgers does not throw for a lot of yards, and he might hit one big play, and then the rest of it are all under 10-yard completions. I still think they're trying to figure out the best way to play on offense, but their defense has been very, very good, so they've been able to win games.
It's interesting, Greg, just studying for this. You know, you think about over the years, Aaron Rodgers extending plays, that incredible arm of his, explosive plays. Every stat I have for this game, Greg, it's like he's the second fastest in the NFL to get the ball out of his hands.
Yes.
His average depth of throw is 5.3 yards, the lowest in the NFL. He's second behind only Bo Nix in throwing it behind the line of scrimmage. And so what I always think is interesting, Greg, is how much of that is protecting the offensive line, how much of that is Rodgers doesn't want to get hit, and how much of it is Rodgers at the stage of his career where, you know, they're going to try to beat people with his brain, a la later stage, you know, Manning, Breeze, Brady, as opposed to his arm and physical ability.
And all those are very legit questions, which are very hard to answer unless you speak to the team and they're forthcoming in their responses. But the bottom line is you nailed it. It's a very condensed passing game. Their run game is spotty. So even though their record is 4-1, because I guess they did have a bye because they played overseas, their offense has really not been a driving force. Defensively, they've been good. They're playing a Bengals team on defense that's made some changes, as you're well aware. The rookie from Clemson, Barrett Carter, has now replaced Logan Wilson, basically as a starter. Wilson last week only played in the base 4-3 defense, whereas nickel, which they played far more than base, it was the two rookies, Barrett Carter and Demetrius Knight. I've been watching Knight because he was one of my favorites coming out of college from South Carolina. So I've been watching him this year. I'm sure you've taken note of him. I think he's played well for a rookie. I thought he was your sort of quintessential stacked backer, which there's not a lot of those guys that come out of college football these days that can actually play with physicality, competitiveness, stack and shed. That doesn't seem to be the college game much these days. So he was a little bit of an outlier, but that fits the NFL, obviously. They play a very young secondary in Cincinnati. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out on that side of the ball.
What do you think about them benching Logan Wilson? That's like a stunner to me, just because he had been such a big part of what they did defensively for so long. He's a captain. I mean, he's making a lot of money. That really surprised me.
Hard for me to answer, only because, to be honest, it's not as if I studied and charted Logan Wilson. And you know how it is with defense, Ross. I mean, you played, you know how every play gets charted by the position coach. So I can't speak to whether he's played well, not well. But it is pretty interesting that a team that, well, they're now 2-4, and obviously they're in a tough situation because Joe Burrow's not there and won't be for quite a while, if at all, this year. They obviously feel they want to make the change and get younger at the position with the 2 draft choices. They're playing Miles Murphy a lot now at defensive end and at times at defensive tackle in some sub-fronts. They have to find out about these young defensive players, and I'm sure in their mind it's time to do that. The secondary is still young, so they changed their D coordinator going into the season. Al Golden is there now. They're probably just trying to figure out if these guys can play and be a foundation going forward.
Yeah, so what's weird to me is it feels like they're going young at certain spots to see what they have, but then they traded for Flacco to try to win, to try to stay in this thing.
Hey, these kinds of decisions are way beyond my simple mind, Ross. I'm just watching the tape. I mean, if they made me GM, then I could answer you, but I don't, it seems contradictory as you just stated. Yes.
Let's get to the Rams and the Jaguars, the Sunday morning game. Both teams off to pretty good starts this year. We'll talk with Dr. Chow on today's Even Money podcast. We do 2 of those a week now to get his thoughts on Puka Nacua, but I would not expect him to play since they have a bye after this. Your thoughts on the Rams and the Jags?
Yeah, the Rams offensively have been interesting this year because they haven't quite run the ball the same way they did a year ago. And not that they're just a running football team. Obviously, with Matthew Stafford, you're not just a running football team. But I don't think they've run it with the same consistency and sustainability that they did a year ago. And we'll see if that's something that they can work on and improve. Defensively, the Rams are a difficult defense to play against because they're so good up front, and they're very aggressive up front. They don't necessarily blitz a lot, but that 4-man D line, particularly when they play dime, and they play dime a pretty high percentage of the time, they really are good getting after the quarterback. They stunt a lot. I think this is a tough matchup for the Jaguars offense, particularly if they're going to get into pure pass situations, which of course do happen in every single game. We know that. I think that the Jaguars offensively, I just feel like something is missing with their defense. Now, they're a team that uses a ton of pre-snap movement. They shift, they motion. That's to be expected because Liam Cohen is there, and we know his background is initially with the Rams and Sean McVay. So you know that pre-snap movement is a significant part of what they do. But it'll be interesting how Lawrence responds in this game if they get into a lot of pure pass situations, because he can be a little quick in the pocket and he can tend to play fast, and he just loses his mechanics, and at times he loses his ball location.
Yeah, I'm getting ready, Greg, to put him, I'm not going to say in the Kyler Murray category, but you know how you said you really don't understand Kyler Murray,
Yep.
you don't know what to expect. I feel like, I guess maybe Trevor Lawrence is just consistently inconsistent, but I guess I'm not, there there are games and moments where I watch him and I think, wow, well that's who we thought he could be, or that's what people thought he could be in high school and college, and you can see the really nice arm and throw and or the mobility, and then there's other games where I really don't I really am surprised he makes some of the throws he makes.
Yeah, and this is, when you go back and look at last week's game against Seattle, Seattle rarely rushed more than their 4D linemen, and they had a really high pressure rate against the Jaguars O-line and Trevor Lawrence. So when you look at what the Rams bring to the table, which overall is probably slightly better group than what the Seahawks bring to the table in terms of the D line, it's one of those games where, again, every game plays out differently. And, sometimes you look at a game, Ross, this, and you go, gee, I don't know how that happened. But when you just look at this game based on what's previously happened, which is all we have from a tape perspective, obviously, you just wonder, can this O-line protect? Lawrence was under significant pressure a week ago, and now they're playing a Rams front four that is very, very good as a pass rush group and really is good with stunts.
Let's talk about the Saints and the Bears on on Sunday, Greg. I was going to say I saw the Bears Monday night against the Commanders. I called that game in the booth with Kevin Harlan. I really do like what Ben Johnson's trying to do with Caleb Williams. A lot of under center play action. I do think he's getting the ball out faster. I do think he missed some throws on Monday night, but he made some throws also. I guess I would say, I feel like meaningful progress, and maybe that's primarily because of what Ben Johnson's, asking him to do.
I think the key thing with Williams is I think he's starting to look a little more comfortable. He's still missing some throws that he has to make, even some completions. The ball location is not quite what you want it to be. I think one trait that Williams must improve as he gains more experience is more comfortable, calculated pocket movement. I think his tendency right now is to break down and start to look to escape. And of course, he's done that his whole life, and he's been good at it. So it's just part of how he plays. But I think I would imagine Ben Johnson is trying to get him, in a sense, to work through progressions and not break down and start to look to escape. But he can make good throws. There's no question. He's a beautiful thrower of the football, as we've talked about numerous times. And then, there's always a balance between the way the quarterback plays and the concepts. Like, for instance, the Swift 55-yard touchdown reception, which came on third down in the fourth quarter, that was a beautifully designed three-man route concept into the boundary. So it ends up being a 55-yard touchdown for Williams, and people look at his numbers and go, wow, he had a really good game. But there's always a connection between the plays that are called and the play design and how a quarterback ultimately performs. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that. And by the way, that's true with every quarterback. When we get to the Chiefs, we'll talk about what they did, a week ago. But it was just a beautifully designed play that made it pitch and catch with run after catch. And that's what you're trying to do for your quarterback, young, old, experienced, inexperienced. But I think the goal with Williams is just to get him to play a more calculated, comfortable game from the pocket.
More great stuff right after this. Can't emphasize enough, whether you're going to a Jordan Davis concert on Friday night in Hershey or you're looking for college or NFL games, please trust me and check out the Game Time app. They have lowest price guarantee. They have these last minute ticket deals, which you'd be blown away by. The fees are included, which I like, and you can actually see what the view is like from your seat, which I don't even know how the technology works, but take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets or whatever tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today and then use that glorious code Ross. I love vodka. Vodka, vodka, vodka. In my that's what movie is that? The Anchorman with Will Ferrell talking about scotch. I love scotch. Scotchity scotch, scotch. Anyway, I love Smirnoff. You know why? Number one reason is because they're a sponsor of the show. And so we should all support them because they're geniuses. But also, they're the world's number one vodka, an official vodka partner of the NFL, official vodka partner of this show. They've been around since 1864. Think about that. I talked about how they've been very helpful for tailgating. They do game days. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Interesting. And then some of the other games, you mentioned the Chiefs. Let's talk about the Raiders and the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs get Rashee Rice back this week, Greg, and certainly they have looked better on offense the last couple games. You know, I was a little bit surprised by this, but not totally, that Steve Fezzik on Tuesday's Even Money podcast said he has the Chiefs as the best team in the NFL, even though they're 3-3. Obviously, he's going by what he sees as opposed to their record. What you obviously had a point you wanted to make about the Chiefs.
Yeah, to me, when I finished watching that tape, I came away thinking that was an Andy Reid, Matt Nagy game because it was an efficient passing game for the Chiefs. It was built more on schematics and route concepts than higher level individual play. I got the sense watching the tape, and don't forget the Lions were missing a lot of people, but I got the sense that the Chiefs had a really strong calculated feel for what they were going to get from the Lions in coverage. Mahomes in this game was really an executor and a ball distributor. His best play came on the first possession when he made a throw that not a lot of quarterbacks probably would have thought it was a viable throw, but it's Mahomes and he knew he could make it when he rolled out and actually was looking to the sideline for the quick throw and he didn't think it was there and then threw it back across his body to Smith-Schuster on the backside crosser. And Joseph, the safety, who's a very good ball hawk and very aware, was kind of sitting there but Mahomes knew that he could get it in there. And you know, that's why Mahomes is Mahomes. But for the most part, Ross, I thought this game was much more about what they did conceptually and tactically than, wow, there were some unbelievable Mahomes plays. But you know what? That's a good thing. That's the way coaches want it to play out.
Absolutely. And now they're going against a Raiders team that they got to win, Greg, but I'm not sure it really looked all that much better, especially offensively. They still are trying to kind of find themselves, I feel like.
Yeah. I teams like that, you know, to be honest with you, I'm never. I mean, you can watch the tape and see what the issues are. I don't know what the answers are. You know, for me, and I always say this honestly, Ross. You know how I feel when I feel like I don't know the answers. I'd almost have to be there to know how they're going about trying to fix it. You know, they've got some issues on the O-line. They're missing Brock Bowers. The run game has not become what they've hoped it would become. It doesn't seem like, and again, you know me, I don't rip coaches, but it doesn't seem like the foundation is Genty, which I think we all thought would be the case when they drafted him with the 6th pick in the draft. So again, I'm not going to rip Chip Kelly or Pete Carroll. I'm not there, but wouldn't you agree? We all thought that when they drafted Genty, that they'd kind of build the offense around him. You don't normally draft a running back that high to make him kind of a set piece, a complementary piece that's off on the side. And it seems like that's the way they played through much of this season.
Feels like the only game where he was like the focal point was the Bears game. He had a big game. They probably should have won that one, obviously, but the turnovers have just been devastating for them.
Devastating.
Yeah, so we got a really interesting matchup on Sunday, Greg, and it's the Vikings and the Eagles.
Yeah.
So I guess Carson Wentz was able to practice fully yesterday. J.J. McCarthy was limited for Minnesota. They're coming off a bye. For Philadelphia, I was not necessarily expecting Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Landon Dickerson to all practice. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll all play, but there's a lot of injury stuff in this one, Greg, and I'm curious to hear kind of your thoughts. Obviously, a lot of people want to get your thoughts on, what happened to the Eagles last Thursday night, a week ago, against the New York Giants.
Well, the Eagles are in many ways a tough team to evaluate on offense, and I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm sure there's a lot of disagreement. We live in a world where, and there's merit to what I'm about to say, where people just automatically view the quarterback as the most important position on a team. Therefore, if a team wins and certainly wins a Super Bowl, therefore the quarterback is great. And those quarterbacks stop being evaluated in many ways because we've accepted that they're great. But the Eagles won a specific way a year ago. Now, every year is different, but the Eagles won a year ago where they were dominant with their O-line, arguably the best in football. They got a historic season from a running back who's very talented, obviously, in Saquon Barkley. They had a run game besides Barkley that was really difficult to defend, in which Jalen Hurts was a significant part of it and understood exactly how to play his role within that run game. They were great in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball with two players who are no longer there that were major players in Josh Sweat and Milton Williams. So now this year, transitioning, the O-line has been poor. I say that honestly based on tape study, not just, hey, not as good, but poor. The D-line has not been able to rush the quarterback at all. So now you have two areas in which they were outstanding a year ago that are lower in the league this year. So the question that I keep thinking about is, can the Eagles only win one way? Because to be a really top offense, Ross, and I think you would agree, you've got to be able to win multiple ways because every week is a different week in the NFL. And I think that's the question that they have to figure out and answer. Can they win multiple ways? Can they win if the run game is not the driving force? And I'm not going to sit here and say they can or can't. I don't know for sure. But they're going to have to figure that out because right now the pass game is not very good. And is it the quarterback? Is it the scheming? It's probably a lot of things. It is never one thing, but it's clearly an issue.
You know what? I kind of like about it, Greg? And this will sound weird to some people, especially the Eagles fans that listen or watch us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I like that players get better or worse. I like that every year, every game is a new entity. Everybody wants to define people and then say, okay, I know that Landon Dickerson is this. I know that this guy is this. But that's not sports. That's not how sports works. That's not life. People get better. People get worse. They improve. They get injured. Like you have to earn it every time out. Every time out there is a totally blank slate, and I think Eagles fans are realizing that this year.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the thing I think about. Can they only win, in a sense, one way? And people look back to 2022 when, they had a better pass game. But the one thing they did a lot that year, and I don't think you can live on that. I don't think you can live on vertical throws outside the numbers, which they did really well in 2022 when they went to the Super Bowl, and Brown had all those catches on vertical routes. And by the way, Jalen throws a great vertical ball, but I don't think you can live in your passing game on those kinds of plays.
Any thoughts on the Vikings on the other side? I mean, obviously they're coming off a bye. It'll be. I'm guessing, Greg, it's going to be Wentz again. I don't think they're going to play McCarthy as long as he's limited.
And by the way, I thought Wentz has played well. He's He's been a more efficient player. He's been a less reckless player. He's always going to miss a few throws here and there because his lower body mechanics get out of whack at times, particularly if he feels that there are people around him. He'll tend to overstride, and when you overstride, you rush your upper body mechanics and the ball can sail on him. But he's been much more condensed. I think this, to me, is what Kevin O'Connell's so good at, is keeping a quarterback within the framework of his mechanics. And Wentz is not getting sacked the way he has in the past. He's been getting the ball out on shorter throws. We'll see. Their run game is, Jordan Mason's not a bad back. You can have a run game with Jordan Mason. So we'll see. I mean, this is, they're playing pretty well on offense right now with Carson Wentz.
Very fired up, Greg, for tomorrow to get your thoughts on the Giants with these rookies on offense.
Yep.
Certainly Colts against the Chargers. I mean, the two Monday night matchups, are you kidding me? Bucks, Lions, and Texans, Seahawks. Tomorrow's episode is going to be fantastic. Do not miss it. Greg, thank you so much for coming on today. Looking forward to tomorrow.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, rewards.labattusa.com. 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 Yo, rewards.labattusa.com. Yo, man, rewards.labattusa.com. Yo, you should check out rewards.labattusa.com. You should totally check out rewards.labattusa.com for sure.
Tux Takes.
All right, Ross, something we kind of talked about throughout the week, if you do it or not. Tua, he apologized for his post-game comments about player-led meetings.
Well, and I said earlier in the week multiple times, it was kind of a self-own from Tua in the sense that, if he's the one calling these player-led meetings and guys aren't showing up or guys are showing up late, it says something about the respect or lack thereof that they have for him. It's a reflection of him. Now, he apologized for creating a distraction and more noise that he and his teammates have to deal with and handle, and I appreciated that because that's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to avoid more things, more distractions and controversy and stuff like that.
And former Jets longtime center Nick Mangold, he needs a kidney transplant.
Yeah, that hurt. When I saw that, Nick and I did not overlap by very much. I think his first 2 years might have been my last 2 years. He was obviously a fantastic player, longtime starting center for the New York Jets, perennial Pro Bowler, All-Pro, all those things. And to hear that, he's on dialysis and needs a kidney transplant, that really, really hurt. Obviously, hoping and wishing the best for Nick, and hopefully he finds a donor. The only other football injury that was of note, and maybe just for me because I'm doing the game tonight, was Mike Gesicki, the Bengals tight end, was put on IR with a pectoral injury. They actually have a lot of tight ends with Drew Sample and Noah Fant, Hudson, although he's banged up, but they have a bunch of tight ends, but they don't have Gesicki for a while. Other than that, Greg Cosell's back tomorrow. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. It's the best gift you could ever get a loved one. Myfrontpagestory.com. Backoffescheduler.com. Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing, HumanHeadNYC.com.